joining. And then how about the rest of the SANDAG staff? Let's start with those in the room and we go around this way.
Hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Franco, a regional planner. I'm kind of helping with the housing policy and planning tool. I'm going to be going over a couple of updates with that today, and then helping carry with some of the TA as well.
Yeah, Tueri Paola, and I manage SANDAG Sustainable Communities team.
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie on the Sustainable Communities team as a regional planner. I'm working on some of the HAP Cycle 2 grants that are open. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Hi everyone, I'm Paulo Farga. I'm a regional planner also on the Sustainable Communities team. I'm a project manager for the region-wide anti-displacement strategy, which is an initiative of HAP. So I'm just here to listen in and
all right, and I believe we have Stacy on the Zoom as well, listening in. Stacy, are you there?
I am here.
Hello.
Hi everyone, Stacy Cooper, Senior Planner on the Sustainable Communities team. Not feeling great today, working from home, so I'm in a staff camera.
All right, well, thank you for listening in today. And let's switch to local agency staff. Maybe we'll start in the room and do you four. We do want to hear your name, your jurisdiction. If you have any recent accomplishments or housing challenges, we'd love to hear about those. And if you have any specific questions about AB 2011 or SB 6, things you came to find out more about, we'd love to hear that as well.
Sorry, with me.
Please.
Okay, great. Amanda Lee, Principal Planner with City of Del Mar. And our most exciting news is we got our final letter from HCD for our housing element. Yeah. So
I'm Adriana. I'm an associate planner with the City of Del Mar. New accomplishments. Yeah, we took our SB 9 ordinance to council last night. They introduced the ordinance after a lot of changes. That was good. And then in July, we're planning to take a number of policies and ordinances to our planning commission related to ADUs. So.
And before we jump to you, Corey, anything you wanted to know about AB 2011 SB 6 or just finding out what you don't know?
yeah, I think some of the concerns relate, we have obviously a small scale downtown. So the huge change in the allowable height and how that relates to the environmental assessment that is provided for, which is different than CEQA. So just wanted to get a little bit of guidance on that.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, my name is Corey Funk. I'm with the City of San Diego Planning Department. Accomplishments, we're all really proud to be designated for housing city by the state, and also getting our sustainable development areas approved in the land development code update recently. And here primarily to learn about AB 2011 and SB 6, just generally all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Brent Rody. I'm a senior planner at the City of San Diego. Now, just back what he said, that we're also working obviously on the Housing Action Package 2.0, and which includes SB 10, which went to the Planning Commission. I'm here to share about AB 2011 SB 6.
Good. All right. Well, we'll switch to those on the Zoom call right now. I'm going to go in the order that I see you following the rows. So in the top, I see Sylvia Daniels. Hello, Sylvia.
Hi there. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Sylvia Daniels, City of San Marcos. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Great. One of our most recent accomplishments is the completion of a new affordable project in partnership with National Core, about 100 units, and that was completed earlier this year, and we have another project opening up in a couple of months, our Laura project with affirmed housing. So those are some of our housing accomplishments.
Great. And anything you're curious to find out more about related to AB 2011 or SB 6?
Really just understanding what other agencies are doing or what everyone else is doing and to prepare for these and how we can get ready for them.
Okay. And let's go next to Carlos, and then how about Angelita after that?
Good afternoon, Carlos Rodriguez, City of Chula Vista Housing Department, interim management analyst. A few accomplishments. We've opened a 100% affordable housing a couple of months ago, and we are working on another one that is going to be in phases for 162 units. And I believe we're opening up 82 of those units pretty soon. And I don't have any questions regarding AB 211 or SB 6. As you mentioned earlier, I'm more here to see what I don't know. And then maybe afterwards, I'll have a few questions.
Great, thank you, Carlos. All right, how about Angelita?
Hi, this is Angelita with the City of National City. I'm a housing programs manager here, but I've been working on shadowing on a lot of development projects. Recently, there's been quite a few developers who have inquired about city properties and how they can get credits from the city, and we are working on our focused general plan right now. We hope to get that accepted or approved by the council in September. We've moved our timeline on out a little bit just to work on our environmental review and our plan called House National City. And so I just want to hear more, just have more exposure to the Senate bills and see where we need to just take more considerations.
Great, thank you very much. And we'll go next to Patsy Chow. Patsy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Basically, on the housing front, we did get our housing element certified as of September last year, and that's great news. And we've been getting a lot of inquiries from developers about SB 6. I've been reading up a lot on SB 6 AB 2011, and so really just curious about getting more training and more information from you guys. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm over here in Community Development Department, City of Vista. I'm the acting director, city planner. And again, just looking forward to getting more information, more educated on the subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you. And good afternoon, Raina. We'll go to you next, and then we'll go to the City of Lemon Grove next. So Raina, hello.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raina. I'm with the City of Imperial Beach. So we've had our housing elements certified. I guess our recent accomplishments is that we recently updated our affordable density bonus ordinance. So that's up to date. And then we did our final updates to our planning and zoning ordinance with relation to SB 9. So we have something adopted there. And then most recently, we sent our ADU ordinance with the new ADU law updates from this year. So we revised our ADU ordinance and sent it back to the Coastal Commission. So we're looking to get that certified here soon with them. And then I don't have any specific questions about AB 2011 or SB 6. In IB, all of our commercial zones are mixed use zones, so they already allow for residential. So just here to learn about maybe just in general what these would do, and maybe there's something that we're not aware of, how it may affect us.
Thank you, Raina. And hello, City of Lemon Grove, are you there? Maybe. All right, well, if you are there and can send us a message through the chat to say hello, that would work too. Looks like maybe you're trying to get on through the phone. Let's go to Marco while we figure that out. Marco, are you there?
Yeah, hi everyone. Marco Verdugo. I'm with the city attorney's office in Solana Beach. I can't really speak to the city's accomplishments, so I'll leave that for staff at a later time, but I'm sure there's a long list. And I'm just looking to get more information on SB6 and AB 2011.
All right, thank you, Marco. And how about Scott? Scott Nightingale, are you there?
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me. I'm Scott Nightingale. I'm a principal planner here at City San Marcos. I think my colleague there from the housing department shared our accolades and our achievements. I'm just here really to get a better understanding on some of the new legislation and AB 2011 and SP6. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. And how about Isaac? Are you there?
Hi, my name is Isaac. I'm with the City of Carlsbad. I'm an associate planner here in the advanced planning team. Some kind of recent accomplishments with the city. City Council just approved our ADU ordinance and our objective design standards for citywide. And I'm looking to just kind of get a better understanding of AB 2011 and SB6. I think we've taken a stab at trying to understand it, but I'm not sure it's correct. So we just want to make sure we can, run that couple questions by you guys.
And how about Saima?
Yes, hello everyone. This is Saima Qureshi. I also work for the City of San Marcos. So my two colleagues are also here. Scott from planning. I'm in the planning division as well. And we have our housing team here as well. And for me, I just want to understand more about SB6 and AB 2011 because we do get some questions from developers. And I would be leaving the call shortly, actually, to jump in another meeting. So I won't be here the whole time, but my other colleague, Scott, is here as well. So thank you so much.
Yep, thank you for joining for the time you're available. And again, this will be recorded. So anyone who has to drop off, we will have the information available to you afterwards as well. So let's try the City of Lemon Grove again, see if maybe you're the caller on the phone, but I see that might have gone away.
You're able to hear us now?
Yeah, hello.
Great. There's a group of us here. My name is Mike Fellows. I'm Community Development Manager for the city. Challenges, we're having challenge of getting our housing element adopted or certified by the state. We're on our third submittal. We as far as accomplishments go, we have several residential developments coming in town that are providing housing units. We have a 70 unit development by KB Homes and several other small infill developments that are currently being constructed. And we're just here to gain more information about AB 2011 and SB6.
Great, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I see a couple more people have joined. How about Todd Phillips? Are you there? Hello, Todd.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was a little late. I apologize. I'm reading on the screen here, trying to catch up. We have, I think, probably the same challenges a lot of cities have, although we do have a unique set of challenges. And, on the west side of our city, we have an older, city that's facing its, redevelopment and infill challenges. And then we have on the east side, greenfield development, still new areas to develop and still meet the challenges of a growing population. So we kind of, straddle both worlds there. And then just really, as everyone else, just need to learn more about AB 2011 and SB6.
All right, thank you, Todd. And then we have a couple of people who joined us in person here. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, your jurisdiction, any recent accomplishments, and if you have any questions about AB 2011 or SB6.
It's clear. Patty Andrews, City of Encinitas Planning Manager. We are doing a AB 2011 SB6 workshop at the city by our legal counsel on June 21st. We have a lot of our housing element sites that are being approved. It's very cool. It was 20% affordable housing at a time, but I'll take it. Lots of housing going on.
Melinda Dacey, senior planner at the housing team at the city of Encinitas. And so working with Patty on our housing element implementation. We also have our displacement risk analysis going to city council on June 14th.
Thank you both for joining us. And then, hello, Veronica. We got your message in the chat. We understand you're here. If you do have any questions, oh, hello, Veronica.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, I was able to move room, so I just want to introduce myself. My name is Veronica Medina. I'm a housing program specialist here with the city of San Marcos. And as far as accomplishments, I believe Sylvia mentioned Via Serena that just opened. So another accomplishment which I'm very excited about is we have a new housing manager, which is Sylvia. So I think that's a big deal. And as far as questions, I don't have any questions at the moment.
All right. Well, thank you all for sharing a little bit about what you've been working on and what's going on in your city. AB 2011 and SB 6 are pretty complicated, so I'm sure you'll have some questions as we go through. And I'll turn it back to Carrie for some more announcements about the HAP program.
All right, so really brief. I just wanted to announce that kind of a goal of this TA program is to create some clear channels of communication and really efficiently give you all the best resources that are not only coming from SANDAG, but also from the state, and just give you kind of, you know, a way to catch up on what's been going on and what's to come and trainings that are happening. So we've started to implement that. We started sending out monthly housing e-blasts, and primarily it's sort of this main group that's been coming to TA program stuff, but I just want to emphasize that please send this sign up out to the rest of your housing staff, any kind of jurisdictional staff that are interested in sort of our housing updates. We're going to be sending them out monthly. They're not intended to be a public email blast, just really for just jurisdiction staff. And so I just wanted to announce, please feel free to send that out. If you want other staff on the email list, send me their emails and I'll include them. But it's really a way just to keep you all updated on what's coming out of the housing program. And then we also just want to give a brief update on our last training we had for those of you who might not have attended. And we just want to make sure everyone was aware of our first template we put out, which was really a library of existing housing planning policy and CEQA streamlining resources. This was shared out to kind of the main TA email group. So if you didn't receive this, we've included it in past emails and I can send it all to you guys. And Thomas will touch on this later, but we're gonna eventually have this up on a housing kind of hub tool that we're creating. So these are the resources we covered, but just wanted to highlight that so you're all aware of it. And I'll pass it over to Thomas.
Thanks, Carrie. So just wanted to provide everybody a kind of a quick update on our housing policy and planning tool and where we're at with some of the products that we're developing. So we've kind of organized the tool into 6 big categories: the anti-displacement strategies, housing data packages, 6-cycle RENA progress tracking, housing element compliance tracking, policy templates, toolkits, and memos, and then affordable housing case studies. Next slide. And we kind of just wanted to show you where we're at with some of these tools right now. So our affordable housing case studies are all basically reviewed and almost ready to be published. So we're really excited about sharing these 25 case studies from around the region. The next slide, please. We're also kind of providing a regional housing element compliance dashboard where everybody in the region can take a look at how everybody's housing elements are doing. That's something that the public and policymakers have really said, we don't have a good idea of who is in compliance and who isn't. So we created a landing page for that. Next slide. We also wanted to provide a landing page for all of these resources that Carrie's been providing by email. I think we sent a PDF out for it as well. So those resources are going to live on one page where you're going to be able to scroll through and find all of those resources in one place. Next slide. And then the one that I kind of wanted to demonstrate a little bit to you today was we're going to be providing reports on the RENA 6 cycle. So how everybody's been, we're basically going to take all of your APR data and then kind of provide some reports on a region-wide level about how we're doing on some of these different efforts. I'm going to share my screen and kind of show you what we've been working with so far. The one that we're really excited about is our ADU report. So a lot of staff and policymakers have been trying to understand how we are, what ADUs look like in the region, what different jurisdictions are implementing different policies, and what the effectiveness of those policies are. And so we wanted to kind of build like a landing page that can show, give a kind of a brief introduction to ADU policy, and then also show as a region how ADUs are getting permitted, where they're getting permitted, whether they're in alignment with some of our regional goals. So I kind of just wanted to give a real quick introduction to it today. And then obviously, if any of you have any feedback on this or would like to see a little bit more of an in-depth tutorial to how this might work, would love to set up some time to receive that feedback. Quickly, one of the things we wanted to take a look at, or we've been asked, is how are our ADUs getting permitted and developed in alignment with some of our regional goals, like TPAs, building, getting ADUs developed within TPAs, getting ADUs developed within our mobility hubs, which are kind of SANDAGs, Sustainable Community Strategy. What percentage of those have been permitted within each? And then also affordability. So the big question was, how many of the ADUs that are getting permitted are affordable, and where are the affordable ADUs getting permitted? Are we seeing them more in the coastal regions, more in our Eastern County jurisdictions? So we're kind of building this out. This isn't good. The data's not finalized. This isn't going to be what it necessarily looks like. But just kind of wanted to give a really quick introduction to what some of these reports may look like, and offer myself as open to conversations about what you guys would all like to see in some of these reports as well. So with that, that was my last slide. If you guys have any quick comments that you'd like to provide, would love to hear it, and then we can go on to the next topic.
I missed this. Is this live right now? Or
It's not, sorry, not live right now. Yeah, this is all kind of like in the beta process. Hoping to get it live in July, but we'll see.
Okay, so that's our question. Adriana had mentioned earlier, we're holding a workshop July 11th through the form of our planning commission. And so this would be a good thing to link to if it is available.
Yeah, so we're hoping that it's going to get broken down by jurisdiction. So like, for example, you'd be able to pull, for Del Mar from 2018 to 2022, all of the ADU permitting data, and see affordability, see geospatially where they're located. One of the things that when you guys submit your APRs to HCD, none of that data is geospatially like on a map, right? So we're kind of taking all of that, putting it on a map, and want to be able to provide you with some of those reports. So when did you say?
And the context of the region, I think is helpful, because we're so small, so they have a good idea of what we know, but just everyone else. July 11th.
July 11th, okay, cool.
And it's covering at least 4 of our ADU programs on that.
Great, we'll definitely take note of that.
Thank you. Yeah, Sylvia?
Are these layers that we can have access to because you've already done that work?
So yes, they'll be made available when they're published. So you'll have access to all of that data as well. So you'd be able to take that data and then augment it on your own too. So
awesome, thank you.
Cool.
Any other questions before we dive deep into AB 2011 and SB 6? All right. So now for our main event here, real quick before I turn it over to Nazanin for a presentation, I just want to quickly introduce the resources we have prepared and will be following up with. We have created an overview in a PDF form that explains as clearly as we can, without getting into government code sections too much, what AB 2011 and SB 6 are, some of the similarities and differences. it's really hard to do that without talking about government code. And so we created checklists, really breaking down the government code sections, provision by provision, in the form that you could use and take as a project review checklist. Hopefully we can publish those as Word documents and make them available so you can pick them up and run with them and edit them as needed for your jurisdiction. There's a lot of footnotes in there with definitions and technical terms. So we'll hear a lot about all of that today, but just wanted to introduce that and let you know that those do exist and will be resources we'll follow up with. So Nazanin, I'll turn it over to you here and let you kind of start letting us know more about AB 2011 and SB 6.
Thanks, Matt, and hi again. So this is just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. First is just a comparison of AB 2011 and SB 6, and then we will get into there are essentially three processes across the two bills for housing development. The first is AB 2011 provides a process for affordable housing development and one for mixed income housing development. And I'll explain what each of those means, as well as providing requirements that apply to all of these projects. So regardless of whether they're affordable or mixed income. And then the process that SB 6 provides for housing developments, how SB 6 extends SB 35, because it does rely in large part on SB 35. And then finally, we'll end with some policy decisions and actions that you all want to consider in the next month or so before these two bills go into effect. So we can go to the first slide. So just as a very general high-level overview, AB 2011 and SB 6 both allow multifamily residential development as a permitted use in zones where office, retail, or parking are principally permitted uses. AB 2011 defines principally permitted use as any use that may occupy more than 1/3 of the square footage of the site without requiring a conditional use permit. SB 6 does not define principally permitted use, and so our sort of suggestion has been to use the same definition for the sake of consistency. And that is one thing that you may want to do by local implementing ordinance is make clear that both of these bills will apply in the same zones. And as I mentioned previously, both bills go into effect on July 1st, 2023. So just a little over 3 weeks. All right, so overview of AB 2011. Proper name for it is the Affordable Housing and High Road Jobs Act of 2022. It creates new government code sections starting at 65912. It has very prescriptive development standards, particularly for the mixed income projects. It is AB 2011 projects are eligible for CEQA streamlining, or rather they're exempt from CEQA. AB 2011 is applicable in the coastal zone, and there are limited labor standards that apply to these projects. All right, so getting into the different project types, as I mentioned, there's both affordable housing development and mixed income housing development under AB 2011, and they're slightly different. So under the affordable housing development, these are 100% affordable projects, exclusive of managers units, which is pretty typical. They have to be a multifamily development, and that's defined as 5 or more units for rent or for sale. There are basic project eligibility and site criteria that we will go through, as well as density standards that are applicable. Similarly, for the mixed income housing development, there are specified affordability levels, and they're slightly different depending on whether it's a rental or an owner occupied project, as far as like the deed restrictions and the amount of affordability. It also has to be a multifamily development, which is 5 or more units. There's a requirement that the mixed income housing development be on a commercial corridor. And I'll get into that a little bit further. There are additional project eligibility and site criteria. There are defined density standards as well as additional development standards, particularly height and setbacks. So SB 6, official name for that is the Middle Class Housing Act of 2022. It's much less prescriptive than AB 2011, but it has stricter labor standards than AB 2011. It also does not create a new ministerial approval process, unlike AB 2011, unless you are invoking SB 35. So that means there's no prescribed review timelines, no ministerial review process, CEQA applies, and it is applicable in the coastal zone. Developers are likely to use SB 6 if the project doesn't qualify for AB 2011, although, as I'll mention later, because of the stricter labor standards, I think the utility of SB 6 is also pretty limited. So just a quick overview and this is just how they compare. For the most part, the allowable use is the same. Affordable housing requirements, as I mentioned, SB 6 does not have any requirements unless SB 35 is invoked or unless you have a local inclusionary policy that does apply. The project may be, for AB 2011, may be either 100% residential, or it could be a mixed use project where at least 2/3 of the square footage is residential. It also actually, the definition adopts the definition from the Housing Accountability Act, I think. So it does actually include transitional and supportive housing as well. And then under SB 6, it may either be 100% residential or mixed use, where at least 50% of the square footage is residential. So that's a slight difference from SB 35 already. There are density standards in both. There are other development standards for mixed income projects under AB 2011. And then, as I mentioned, we'll get into the approval processes and the labor requirements. Any initial questions?
Hearing none, let's keep going and we'll dive into all of that more. So,
yeah. All right. So we'll start on the first process, which is AB 2011's process for affordable housing projects. So it applies in zones where office, retailer, parking are the principally permitted use. We've kind of gone over what that means already, but essentially where that use may occupy more than 1/3 of the square footage of the site without a conditional use permit. Maybe 100% residential or mixed use project where at least 2/3 of the square footage is residential. So 100% of the units, excluding managers' units, are dedicated to lower income households. And so for owner-occupied or for sale projects, that's at an affordable cost. And for rental projects, that's at an affordable CT-CAC rent. And I think that's intended to allow for those projects to apply for tax credits in order to make funding possible. So there's also a requirement for a recorded deed restriction for the affordable housing project. That's 55 years for rental units and 45 years for owner-occupied units. AB 2011 doesn't specifically provide that the local jurisdiction can apply longer restrictions. So it seems like you're kind of limited to these if AB 2011 is used. So project eligibility and site criteria. It must be a legal parcel in an urban area. And one thing I'll note is that previously there was the language of urban cluster and urbanized area. The Census Bureau has gotten rid of those terms and combined them now. So there's just one term of urban area, which is applicable. So I would look for that if you are trying to determine site eligibility. There are no street types or frontage requirements for the affordable housing projects. And similarly, there's no site size requirements. So the parcel or the site can be as large or as small as it is. There's no limitation on that. 75% of the perimeter of the site must adjoin parcels developed with urban uses. It cannot be on or adjoined to a parcel where more than 1/3 of the square footage on the site is dedicated to industrial use, and industrial uses are defined in the statute. And it also cannot be on a site that's governed by the mobile home residency law, the special occupancy parks law, the recreational vehicle law. So basically any of the those mobile home or RV laws under state law. If it's within a neighborhood plan area, the plan must allow for multifamily housing on the site. And neighborhood plan area is defined. It includes specific plans, urban village plans, master plans. It's quite a broad definition of what neighborhood plan area means. So if you do have one, and in particular, it applies to neighborhood plan areas that were adopted either before January 1st, 2022, or had a notice of preparation issued before January 1st, 2022, and are adopted or formalized before January 1st, 2024. So if you have any of those that apply, the site must allow for multifamily housing based on that plan. The project must complete a phase 1 environmental assessment and complete the mitigation if there is a substantial, sorry, I don't remember the exact language, but if a substantial impact is found, I believe is what it is. The project also, and this is very particular actually, it says that none of the housing units can be located within 500 feet of a freeway or 3,200 feet of an oil or gas refinery. So that is measured from the structure, not the property line or the parcel line. And so that's just one thing to keep in mind. If the site is vacant, it cannot be in a very high fire hazard severity zone, and it cannot have tribal resources that could be affected without mitigation. Next slide. So the site must also satisfy environmental criteria related to all of the following, and you'll notice that this actually makes direct reference to SB 35. And so, look back at SB 35 and I would determine if the site, meets the environmental criteria. We didn't want to just flat out say it cannot be on sites that are within one of these, because some of these, for instance, the very high fire hazard severity zones, have sort of exemptions. So it will be important to look back and make sure that the site doesn't fall within one of those exemptions. All right, so the density standard and the applicable zoning. So the project must meet objective standards for the zone that allows residential use at a greater density between the following. The existing zoning designation for the parcel if it allows multifamily residential use, or the zoning designation for the closest parcel that allows residential use at a density that is appropriate to accommodate the affordable housing. And so that's essentially what is called default density or Mullen density. And that's going to be for metropolitan jurisdictions, 30 dwelling units per acre. And for suburban jurisdictions, it's 20 dwelling units per acre. So it is whichever one provides the greater density between the following. So you'll want to, and closest parcel, one thing, again, and we'll summarize these at the end, but one thing that you might want to consider in an implementing ordinance is defining how closest parcel will be determined, because that is not defined. The statute does not provide a method for determining what is considered the closest parcel, or if there are two parcels that are equidistant from the parcel that provide, that accommodate the default density, how you would choose between the two. Any questions here? I see one.
Patsy, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Hi, Nazanin. I had read some information. I think it was back on your slide. Maybe it was 27. I was trying to look at the bottom numbers. I had read something about AB 2011 that the project site must abut a commercial corridor and have a frontage along the commercial corridor of at least 50 feet, meaning commercial corridor as defined as a highway, not a freeway. Does that sound accurate?
So we'll get into that. That applies for the mixed income housing development projects. It does not apply to affordable housing development projects.
Got it.
That
Okay.
requirement, yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
Yeah, we have a couple questions here in the room.
If a parcel abuts, I think it was 1/3 industrial uses, is there a definition for industrial uses or is it local?
No, there is a definition of industrial uses, and I'm sorry, let me see. I do have the bill in front of me, but let me pull it up really quickly. So industrial uses, first off, dedicated to industrial use is defined as the square footage that is currently being used as an industrial use. The most recently permitted use of the square footage as an industrial use, or the site was designated for industrial use in the latest version of the local government's general plan adopted before January 1, 2022. And then industrial use itself is defined, means utilities, manufacturing, transportation, storage, and maintenance facilities, and warehousing uses. It does not include power substations or utility conveyances such as power lines, broadband wires, and pipes.
Any other questions, Corey?
Does the law talk about airport safety zones as environmental criteria?
Did you catch that, Naz?
Yeah, it does not mention that anywhere. So no.
We have another question from Patty.
Regarding that specific plan or neighborhood plan, we were chatting with Barbara, and she had mentioned that if you're in a specific plan and it allows for residential use, that the entire specific plan is not subject to it or is exempt. Is that correct? And Melinda and I were discussing, because the law says a site, it doesn't say the whole plan. It says it's a site. So is it, if the site is within a specific plan, does the entire specific plan have to allow residential use, or is it just that specific site? Because that's very different.
Yes, it says if it's a site within a neighborhood plan area, then the neighborhood plan has to provide for multifamily residential on that site.
Does that answer your question?
So that site would be permitted to have a development pursuant to AB 2011?
If the site allows for multifamily, then it would be able to use AB 2011. If it does not, if it's a site within a neighborhood plan and the neighborhood plan does not allow for multifamily on that site, then it cannot use AB 2011.
So if you have a neighborhood plan and a commercial, a site with principally permitted commercial uses, it's essentially exempt. Is that the right conclusion, Naz?
No, because you could have a site that has principally permitted commercial uses, but allows multifamily with a conditional use permit.
Got it.
So on those sites, they would be able to use AB 2011. But if you don't allow for multifamily in any way, regardless of with or without a a conditional use permit or other type of use permit, then it cannot use AB 2011.
Thank you.
If an industrial zone allows office uses that are not conditional or principally permitted, then I'm assuming that industrial zone would have to allow for AB 2011 projects. Is that correct?
It would not have to allow. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
If office is a principally permitted use.
If office is a principally permitted use, then it does have to allow AB 2011 projects, unless it is, like you said, it's an industrial zone, then it might be abutted by industrial uses greater than what is permitted by AB 2011, in which case you could not use AB 2011 on that site.
So the restriction in that case would be the current uses and adjacent current uses rather than permitted.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions about the AB 2011 affordable housing development? We're going to switch to the mixed income, which only gets more complicated. So
yeah.
Let's do that then. All right. Back to you here, Naz.
Thanks. So this is the same. It's going to be located in a zone where office, retail, or parking are a principally permitted use. So affordable housing requirements. For mixed income affordable housing projects, they have to provide a number of on-site affordable units. For rental housing developments, that is either 8% very low income and 5% extremely low income, or 15% lower income. And regardless of which mix is chosen, a 55-year deed restriction is required. For owner-occupied projects, they must include either 30% moderate income or 15% lower income, and a 45-year deed restriction is required. Next slide. So this is the first sort of complicated piece that comes in. But if you have a local inclusionary housing requirement, then AB 2011 provides that you shall include the percentage of affordable units required by either AB 2011 or the local requirement, whichever is higher. You have to, the project has to meet the lowest income targeting in either policy. And if the local requirement is greater than 15% dedicated for lower income units, and does not provide for very low and extremely low income households, then it must include 8% of units for very low income households and 5% of units for extremely low income households. And then you take the 15% and you subtract it from the percentage of the units required by the local policy at the highest required affordability level. So that's really complicated. So let me give an example. If you have a local inclusionary policy that requires 20% lower income for projects, what you would do in that instance, or what the development would have to provide, is 8% for very low income, 5% for extremely low income, and then 5% for lower income, and which would get you to a total of 18% affordable. And you get that last piece by taking the 15% and subtracting it from the 20%, and then it's at whatever the level is, so lower income in this case. So it's a little bit wonky. I don't know how many jurisdictions in the SANDAG region have a local inclusionary requirement that is above 15%, but this is just something to keep in mind if you are either considering that or if you already have that. Next slide. So project eligibility and site criteria. So again, it has to be a legal parcel in an urban area. And this is where I believe it was Patsy's question comes in. For the mixed income housing developments, it must be on a site that abuts a commercial corridor that is between 70 and 150 feet in width. And really, commercial corridor just means public street. It has a wonky definition of it's not a highway or a freeway or this and that, but really when you look up all of those definitions, it comes down to a public street that has a right of way of 70 to 150 feet in width. 75% of the perimeter of the site must adjoin parcels developed with urban uses. The same limitation on sites with industrial uses applies. And then in addition to abutting a commercial corridor, the site has to have 50 feet minimum frontage on the commercial corridor. It also, the site has to be less than 20 acres. It cannot be a site with 1 to 4 existing dwellings units, and it cannot be a site that's zoned for single family. So additional requirements, the site cannot require demolition of historic structures, affordable housing, rent-controlled housing, or housing occupied by tenants in the last 10 years. It also cannot have had demolition of residential uses within the last 10 years. And finally, the mixed income housing development project must provide required notice to commercial tenants and relocation assistance. And the relocation assistance is only required to be provided to a certain subset of commercial tenants who meet the eligibility criteria. Okay, so height and density standards. Another one of the great complications of AB 2011. So for metropolitan jurisdictions, and this is broken down in part by the size of the site. So for sites of less than 1 acre, then the minimum density that's required is 30 dwelling units per acre. However, if the current zoning allows for greater than that, then that is what is going to apply. So for each of these, if the existing zoning for the site allows more than what AB 2011 would require, then that is what's going to apply. It's the greater of. And then for sites less than 1 acre, there's a 35-foot max, or again, whatever the current zoning requires for that site. And it's not limited, as far as height goes, it's not limited to residential. It's whatever height would be required even for a commercial development on that site. For sites greater than 1 acre and less than 20 acres that are on a right-of-way that is less than 100 feet, there is a 35-foot max height, and a minimum of 40 dwelling units per acre is required. For sites greater than 1 acre and less than 20 acres on a right-of-way that is greater than 100 feet, there's a 45-foot max and 60 dwelling units per acre. And then if you are within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, then there's a 65-foot max height and 80 dwelling units per acre. However, the 65-foot max height does not apply in the coastal zone.
Or if you have less than 100,000 people, right? Is that true?
Yes, that is true for the height. Yes, that's correct.
Wait, I'm sorry, say that again. In the coastal zone, the height is not.
This last condition with the 65-foot max and the 80 dwelling units per acre, if you're within 1/2 mile of a transit system or transit stop, you have greater than 100,000 people, it doesn't apply within the coastal zone. They exempt that.
Well, okay, so it's a little bit complicated because the 100,000 doesn't apply to the density. So the population piece doesn't apply to density, but it does apply to the height. So just keep that in mind. Regardless of what size jurisdiction you are in, if you are within a one half mile of a major transit stop, the 80 dwelling units per acre is going to be your minimum. Unless you allow for more than that already. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. So then for non-metropolitan jurisdictions, there's a whole other set of requirements, and I won't go through these each one by one. I think I've given you a sense of how you read this chart. But same thing with the last one. If you're within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, then you have a 45-foot max height and 70 dwelling units per acre. And again, that doesn't, I believe that does not apply in the, oh, I guess it wouldn't be. Yeah. Okay. So AB 2011 can be used in the coastal zone, as I mentioned, for eligible projects, and does not change the applicability of the Coastal Act. However, the increased height limits for projects within 1/2 mile of transit are not applicable within the coastal zone, which is what we just mentioned. Okay, setback requirements. These are extremely complicated, and so I would merely suggest that you take a look at the statute for the setback requirements. I'm happy to take questions on it, but going through it, I think, is not going to be productive. It's much easier to read it and try to understand what it's saying. And I think the checklists also that Ascent and SANDAG staff have created are really helpful for breaking that down. So I'm not going to go through the setback requirements. Just know that it depends on the setback requirements depend on what type of street. So whether it's on the commercial corridor, whether it's on a side street, whether it's on a property line that abuts residential or abuts commercial, these are all things that require different setbacks. I think
Those are really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we couldn't quite illustrate all of the words in the law. Essentially what they're talking about though is front, side, and rear setbacks in various conditions, depending on what your adjacent use is and what's the definition of abutting is. So that's what we're trying to illustrate.
That's a good representation, because when you read through the statute, it is a mess.
Yep.
So I appreciate you.
All right. So other development standards, the local jurisdiction cannot require parking except for bicycle, electric vehicle, and disabled parking spots. In addition, as far as other objective standards that are going to be applicable, it's going to be either for the closest zone allowing multifamily residential at the height or at the density required by AB 2011, or if the required density does not exist, then the zone allowing the greatest multifamily residential density in the jurisdiction. So just as an example, if you have a site on which the 80 dwelling units per acre applies, if you don't have any zones within your jurisdiction that allow for 80 dwelling units per acre of multifamily residential development, then you will use the development standards or the objective standards from the zone in your jurisdiction that allows the greatest multifamily residential density. So let's say that's 60. You would use it for that one. Any questions? I'm sure there are plenty.
I don't see any online, so Patty, go ahead. And if you wouldn't mind speaking up so everyone can hear you.
How many now? On the last slide about the closest zoning that allows multifamily, or doesn't it have to allow us a certain amount of density to like 30 DU per acre? I thought we said it was 30 DU per acre if you're in a metropolitan, regardless of what the next closest zone is. the parcel. It's so wonderfully written.
So essentially what you first do, and I would view it as like a two-step process. So what you're gonna do is determine what of the four, if we can go back to that slide, I think it would actually be helpful for the metropolitan jurisdictions. Okay, so let's say that you have a site that meets the criteria in the graphic in the upper right-hand corner, right? So you have a site that's greater than 1 acre and less than 20 acres, and it's on a commercial corridor, it butts a commercial corridor and has 50 feet of frontage along a commercial corridor with a right-of-way of greater than 100 feet, right? And so in that instance, it's the density that applies there is either going to be the greater of whatever the permitted density is for that site already, or 60 dwelling units per acre. So let's say whatever is permitted right now is 35. So what it is going to become is 60 dwelling units per acre is the minimum density that is required for this project. So you take that 60 dwelling units per acre and you say, okay, this is what is required. And then for your other objective standards, what you do is you look at all of the zones in your city and you say, do we have any that allow for 60 dwelling units per acre? If so, which one is the closest one? And whichever one is the closest one, that's the objective standards are going to apply from that zone. If you don't have any within your city that allow for 60 dwelling units per acre, then you go to the next step and you say, okay, which zone in our city allows for the greatest density, residential density? In that case, let's say it was like, I don't know, 45. It doesn't really matter. You would just take the objective standards, all the other objective standards from that zone that allows the greatest residential density and apply those, since you don't have any zones that allow for 60 dwelling units per acre.
Got it.
So you may end up with a mismatch between your standard, what the density is calling for, if you don't have a satisfactory set of objective standards tied to, in this case, 60 dwelling units.
Right, but you don't have to do 60. You could just use your highest. In our case,
Right.
It's 30.
Right.
But I don't think we're metropolitan. Is it defined like 100 agency with 100K or more? Is there a specific definition?
You are a metropolitan. Encinitas is metropolitan with default density of 30 dwelling units per acre. So
Is there a definition in the law that I just haven't read?
there is a definition, yeah. It refers to specific government code sections, which I think in turn refer to HCD to develop a methodology. We do link to HCD's technical advisory that walks through their methodology, which ultimately comes down to this handy table that lists the 2020 census populations and defines each jurisdiction as metropolitan and non-metropolitan. And just for the record, every jurisdiction in the region is a metropolitan jurisdiction with the following exceptions: Coronado, Del Mar, and Solana Beach, I believe, are the only suburban jurisdictions. So
Very helpful. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
go ahead.
How does this work with state density bonus law? And second question, is the expectation that every city in California will have to amend their general plan and zoning ordinances to accommodate these new laws?
So to answer your first question, AB 2011 specifically provides that these projects can apply for density bonus under density bonus law. It's a little bit wonky because, you know, we've been looking at this and there's kind of a mismatch between the maximum densities or the minimum densities rather, and the maximum heights. Like 65 foot max height, 80 dwelling units per acre though is your minimum density. So someone could come in with something above 80 dwelling units per acre. That just doesn't sort of seem to match up. The thing is that state density bonus law provides that you waive your local or, you know, or grant concessions or waivers for local standards, not state law standards. So it is a little bit weird of how that's actually going to play out because of that. I would, that's one thing that I would suggest talking to your city attorney about. If you do get one of these projects and they do request a density bonus, how you're going to deal with sort of that mismatch between the development standards in the law. But it does apply. And then as far as amending your general plan, you don't have to do that. This is already existing law. So regardless of what you do on the local level, someone can come in with an AB 2011 project. So you don't have to take any actions. And in fact, AB 2011 provides that you can't adopt specific standards that are applicable only to AB 2011 projects. So you can't go in and adopt new standards that would only be applicable to these types of projects. You have to apply what is already there, essentially. Or just adopt, if you're going to make changes, they have to be generally applicable. They cannot be limited to AB 2011 projects.
Thank you, Naz. Any other questions on the mixed income?
Yeah, we had a question that came up on how right-of-way width is measured and determined. It's the ultimate right-of-way. Are we going curb to curb? Because there's some commercial areas in cities that may go beyond the 100 feet, 150 feet, I think is the max. So I don't know if there's any kind of guidance on that.
So right-of-way is for the definition of right-of-way, it adopts the definition in the vehicle code section 525. I don't know if that specifies.
Says right.
Yeah, we saw that.
So,
Yeah, so it doesn't seem to really define that. That might be something else to define an implementing ordinance or just, your local administrative regulations. So yeah, they don't provide great direction on how these measurements of like closest or adjoining or these types of things are supposed to be measured. So that leaves you at least a little bit of latitude, I think, to do it how you want to do it at the local level.
so your confusion is confirmed.
Yes.
Any other questions from anyone on Zoom or here in the room? If not, we can keep going and talk about SB 6.
I think there's a little more on AB 2011. Just generally applicable stuff.
Oh, yes. Forgot about this section.
Yes. Okay. So all projects that qualify for AB 2011 must pay prevailing wage. In addition, AB 2011 projects with greater than 50 units have to meet additional labor requirements, including apprenticeship requirements, healthcare contributions, and other contracting and reporting criteria. This is not so important for you all as jurisdiction staff to know. They are required to provide reports to you on a monthly basis. The developers and their contractors are, but ultimately the enforcement, will fall with DIR and not so much with you all. But it's just something good to know. All right, so the ministerial review process for projects with less than 150 units. This is actually very important for you all to know. For all AB 2011 projects, regardless of whether it's 100% affordable or mixed income, if it's less than 150 units, then you must inform the applicant of any inconsistencies within 60 days from the date of submission of the application. If you do not inform them within that timeline, then the project is deemed compliant with the qualifying criteria. And then you must complete the process of application review and issue a decision within 90 days after submission. That does reset if you are informed of inconsistencies, or if you do inform rather the applicant of inconsistencies. You also can do design review. Design review is limited to objective standards, and it must be completed within the 90 days. So that is the process for less than 150 units. For more than 150 units or equal to more than 150 units, you have a little bit more time. You must notify the applicant of any inconsistencies within 90 days after submission of the application. If they're not notified of the inconsistencies, again, then the project is deemed compliant. And then the ministerial review process must be completed within 180 days. And again, that includes doing design review. Qualifying AB 2011 projects, as we mentioned, must be reviewed on a ministerial basis. They're exempt from CEQA, and you're not required to or not permitted to require any discretionary approvals such as a conditional use permit for these projects. This is also another important piece, and in particular, something probably like the first step that you want to, one of the first steps that you want to take in the next month or so is considering whether there are any properties that you want to exempt or parcels that sites we want to exempt from AB 2011. So you can exempt certain parcels from AB 2011 if substitute parcels are identified. You have to ensure that the development of the substitute parcels will affirmatively further fair housing. So those are findings that you need to make, and will not reduce the total zoned capacity for residential development or affordable residential development. And finally, the properties must be exempted before a development proponent submits an application for AB 2011. So other requirements, as I mentioned, these projects are eligible for density bonus, incentives, concessions, waivers, or parking ratios. Again, you cannot adopt standards that apply only to AB 2011 projects. These projects must comply with SB 330 replacement housing requirements, even if you're not in an affected city or county. So if they're demolishing any dwelling units, then those and their protected units fall within that definition of protected units, then they do need to be replaced. And in certain cases, replacement housing must be provided to the current residents. And then finally, you must include your AB 2011 projects in your annual progress report for your housing element. Next slide, any questions on those?
I have a question. Do you have an application form and a processing fee for an AB 2011 application? If it's a ministerial process, is it simply applying for a building permit, or how does that work?
So I mean, you can do a review to ensure consistency with objective standards. So, and there may be instances where a conditional approval is required. As I said, you also can do design review if that is something that you require already. But yes, I mean, essentially, you know, however you're doing your other ministerial processes like ADUs or the like is how you're going to want to do the review these projects. And then as far as application forms, I don't know that we have any of those yet, but I think that the checklist, the application checklists that are going to be published or sent out, those haven't already been sent out, have they, Matt?
They have not. We'll follow up with those. Those should be a good start for application form for these types of projects. We do have one specific to each of the two AB 2011 projects, the affordable housing and the mixed income, as well as SB6. We have some placeholders for some basic site information and project information. So it should be a pretty good start. And I'll also offer to anyone else, you know, if you want help developing a form specific to your jurisdiction, that might be something that's a good fit for our local staffing assistance through the HAP TA program.
Hey, can I just clarify one thing? Because I thought I heard her say you can ask for like a conditional review that you would do, but there's no objective or discretionary permits. And like we currently do discretionary design review. It's not ministerial. So it design review or even a use permit, you said, to be a ministerial process.
So not a use permit, but so you can do design review with objective standards, any objective standards. And so AB 2011 provides that you can disapprove, approve, or conditionally approve. So for instance, because you're applying your objective standards potentially from zones where, I don't know, there are like offsite improvements or things like that that are required, you can conditionally approve based on those. There's no limitation, if that makes sense. So you can say we're going to conditionally approve based on these offsite requirements that are required by the standards that are applicable from the closest zone or whatever it is.
Thank you.
Any other AB 2011 questions?
So in San Diego, when we get projects, we do a parcel specific analysis. If we determine that there is ESL, environmentally sensitive lands, it could require discretionary permit. There's also proximity requirements. So if there's no discretionary permit, but if they create objective standards when that arises, how would you go around?
Well, I think on your ESL lands would probably fail to satisfy the SB 35 criteria. Right. So the project may not satisfy all the criteria and be eligible for this. So that might be one screening criteria to filter that situation out from the beginning. But yeah, what was the second part of your question? Or did I answer?
Yeah. Well, I was saying would we then have to create objective standards when that does arise. So if there is ESL, you have to do this or that in those conditions, in those situations.
Yeah, those should exist now if you're looking to invoke those, because once the project comes in, it's vested, and yeah, you can't create specific standards specific to AB 2011.
And currently SB 35 is not applicable in coastal zones. And I heard that they're trying to amend that legislation to be applicable in coastal zones. Is that, so SB 6 would not be even an issue?
We'll talk more about SB 35 and SB 6 here in a moment. I think that particular bill you're referencing was SB 423, the Scott Wiener bill, which I think started out with the idea of expanding, or maybe it was the David Alvarez bill. I think some of that has gone away during this legislative session. So I think the bill that was extending the time frame for SB 35 that Scott Wiener was pushing did get passed, but it was, I think, mostly about the timeline, and it clarified some language related to builders remedy projects as well. So that just got passed, I think, this week. He had a press conference and all of that. So
That's in the Senate.
That's the first house of house. So is that?
Well, so SB 35 is not applicable in coastal zones, right? So that the provisions that say it extends SB 35, so it's not applicable.
Right. At this point, SB 35 is not applicable in the coastal zone. So it does not come into the picture if you're in the coastal zone.
that was part of what I wanted to say. As a coastal jurisdiction, there's a significant difference here. I just wanted to confirm our understanding when you talked about the deemed compliant scenario, that doesn't apply to coastal jurisdictions. And it ties into that SB 35 setup. The other part is with the no parking provision. That doesn't apply in a coastal zone city, particularly when you're within a quarter mile of the shoreline. So another special condition. And then this whole concept of whoever passed the law that somehow we're not doing CEQA, that also doesn't fly. So us as jurisdictions, you know, we're trying to figure out if you should even do an ordinance because we're obviously going to have to do CEQA. There are significant issues. And I think it does apply to some environmentally sensitive lands because in our case, one of our business areas, one of our commercial zones is in the floodplain. So that is absolutely something we'll have to analyze. And the huge character change, I mean, we're talking about areas where you're talking about a 20-foot increase in height. That's not something that you can just say, oh yeah, that's absorbed by the law. There's no way in a coastal jurisdiction. And then of course, the way that it's perceived, parking provides for coastal access, which is also a fair, reasonable argument against a jurisdiction who's trying to process one of these. So just wanted to throw that out there. And I don't know, Nazanin, if you have any comments on that or familiarity with processing in the coastal jurisdictions, but that's a really important nuance that we've learned in trying to prep for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, you know, AB 2011 provides that it doesn't change the applicability of the Coastal Act or any local coastal plan. And so, you know, that seems to be essentially an override of this state law to the extent that there are places where it conflicts with AB 2011. Your local coastal plan, or, you know, if you don't have a certified one, then the Coastal Act are going to essentially take precedences. Yeah.
But do you think that we could require CEQA though? Because it clearly says for 2011, it is a ministerial process and it's exempt from CEQA. So I don't know that you can.
Well, for us processing an ordinance, we absolutely would have to comply with CEQA for that. So the jurisdiction does. The law suggests that a project could pursue it, but if you don't have, if it's not provided for in your LCP, where does that put the applicant? And Coastal Commission absolutely expects that equivalent level of review. So it's just, again, it's a gap in the law. It doesn't fill in the gap. We're going to get challenged in the end. So it's figuring out how to cover your base as a jurisdiction. And again, that's a lot of investment that we have to do on top of everything else we're doing with housing implementation. So I know everybody gets it, but it's just, this is what we figured out. And thanks for putting it all together.
Any other AB 2011 questions? All right, let's go through SB6 then.
All right. So SB6 provides uses the same language that these projects are going to be in a zone where office, retail, or parking are principally permitted use. However, SB6 actually doesn't define principally permitted use as AB 2011 does. It doesn't have any explicit definition, in fact. And so we've sort of been assuming that it has the same definition as AB 2011, but that is something that, as I mentioned before, you may want to clarify, you know, in a local ordinance or administrative regs, or however you ultimately end up implementing, that it is going to apply in the same places that AB 2011 applies. There is no affordable housing requirement in SB6 unless there is a local inclusionary requirement and or the project is also applying for SB 35, in which case the SB 35 requirements for affordable housing would apply. The project may be either 100% residential or a mixed use project where at least 50% of the square footage is residential. And so this is slightly different than SB 35. SB 35 provides that it can only be used for projects that are either 100% residential or mixed use projects where at least 2/3 of the square footage is residential. And so essentially this is creating sort of like a little bit of an extension saying you can use SB 35 for a project that is up to where at least 50% of the square footage is residential rather than 2/3. But there are all these other requirements that apply. And then similar to the AB 2011 mixed income projects, the site must be 20 acres or less. So SB 6 incorporates objective zoning parking design standards for either the closest parcel that allows the default density. So again, that's going to be either the 30 dwelling units per acre for metropolitan or 20 dwelling units per acre for suburban jurisdictions, or the standards for the existing zoning for a parcel if it allows density greater than the default density. And in addition, the project has to comply with all other objective standards for the parcel. So similar to AB 2011, SB 6 does have a process for exempting certain parcels. You can exempt a site if you make findings with substantial evidence of either that you're concurrently relocating the lost density to other sites, or you're accommodating lost density on sites by allowing greater residential density than required by SB 6. And the replacement sites must be suitable for residential development and allow by right development. Any questions on that?
All right, no questions on SB 6. Let's keep going then.
Okay, so just to give everyone sort of a reminder of SB 35. So SB 35 projects must meet affordable housing requirements based on RENA performance. So projects with more than 10 units also must pay prevailing wage under SB 35. Contractors must use a skilled and trained workforce for larger projects, unless they're 100% affordable projects. Sites must not have contained housing within the last 10 years. Sites must not be in the coastal zone, and subdivisions are not included. So SB 6 expansion of SB 35. Essentially, this is adding on to SB 35 and is saying that not only is SB 35, not only can you now use SB 35 in an urbanized infill site or residential mixed use zone, you can also use it on a site where office, retail, or parking are principally permitted use. As I mentioned, the project type, you can now also use it if it's a project within a site where office, retail, or parking are principally permitted use, then you can use it for a mixed use project with at least 50% residential rather than 2/3 residential. If you're going to use SB 35 and in conjunction with SB 6, then the developer not only has to pay prevailing wage, but also use a skilled and trained workforce. Affordable housing. So for SB 6, if you're going to use SB 35, then you're going to have to provide the 10, 20, or 50% affordable housing. And then the approval process for SB 35 is, as you know, pretty similar to the one as in AB 2011, except that a tribal consultation is required. And so if you're going to use SB 6 in conjunction with SB 35, then you're subject to the same approval timelines, and a tribal consultation will be required. So a little bit comparing AB 2011 and SB 35. So SB 35 on its own does not allow residential development in a commercial zone. It must be a zone that's planned for residential or mixed use development. The project types are similar for AB 2011 and SB 35. The affordable housing requirements are slightly different. We went through that. Under both, the projects are exempt from CEQA. Under both, prevailing wage is required. There's a streamlined ministerial process. And then under AB 2011, there's no required tribal consultation, whereas, as I just mentioned, under SB 35, a tribal consultation is required. Okay. So if you're using SB 6 and SB 35 together and the project is consistent with objective design standards, then no CEQA review is permitted. Projects receiving a density bonus or other regulatory incentives are considered consistent. Maximum unit allocations must be ignored. Maximum density should be consistent with what is shown in the general plan. And general plan and zoning standards are not required to be met if SB 6 criteria are satisfied. Any questions?
Let's keep going, Naz, and we'll questions as we reach the end here.
Sounds good. All right, so implementing ordinances. So both bills allow but don't require jurisdictions to adopt an implementing ordinance. You could adopt separate ordinances for each law, or one ordinance that covers options for residential development in zones where commercial, retail, or parking are principally permitted use, or you could do neither and just do, an administrative sort of regulation or policy instead. Next slide. So some recommendations. So project site is not defined. So for instance, when we talk about, the project site has to be 20 acres or less for SB 6 projects or AB 2011 mixed income housing projects. Project site is not defined in the law, and already we've had a couple of clients come to us and say, hey, I have a developer who's arguing that the project site is not the total parcel, but instead the area that they are developing on, or that the project would actually be on. And so, that is something that you may want to define so that you don't have confusion as to whether it's going, if someone develops on a 40-acre, is trying to develop on a 40-acre parcel or something like that, but the project's only going to be on 5 acres, whether or not they can use AB 2011 process or SB 6 on that for that project. In addition, you may want to clarify closest parcel. And in particular, you also want to define which zones have office, retail, or parking as principally permitted uses. And finally, preparing maps of eligible parcels where additional density and height may apply, or by project type that applies, in particular, if it's on a commercial corridor, it has a proper frontage, things like that. Next slide. So some policy decisions to be made. There's a decision if there are any parcels that you want to exempt and how density will be reallocated in that case. Determining how to enforce the relocation assistance requirements for qualified commercial tenants and displaced residents. We typically suggest that you hire a just from experience, hiring a relocation specialist has been the easiest way to deal with developers, and, passing through that cost to those developers in order to recover for that relocation specialist, oftentimes because developers are unwilling to share information about the tenants that are there, making it difficult for you to determine what requirements apply. And then deciding if and how your jurisdiction will monitor the labor requirements, including reviewing reports from developers. So as I mentioned, the developers are required to provide you with monthly reports of how them and their contractors are meeting the labor requirements under each of these bills. And so, whether you're going to have someone who within, your staff is going to be responsible for those, and whether you're going to review them and refer them if you do see violations, if you intend to refer them to the DIR, and sort of just coming up with that process. Next slide. I think that's it. So now we can just do any questions, discussion, whatever's helpful.
We have a few more updates kind of on what's coming next for the HAP program, but before we get there, I want to open it up again for any questions, comments, or clarifications on AB 2011 or SB 6. Obviously, this is a lot to go through and very context sensitive and project specific. So we will be sending out the resources as you take a look at those. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out and we can do our best to respond that way as well. Not hearing any other questions. I mentioned before, if any work we can do through our local staffing assistance in the HAP TA program to help support you related to AB 2011 or SB 6 or other items, please reach out to the email on the screen, sandag_hapta@ascentenvironmental.com. That's the primary way. You can always reach out to Carrie as well. Looking ahead for upcoming technical assistance, we are very close to being finalizing some guidance on AB 2097. So keep an eye out for that. And then I think in July-ish time, we're planning for a regional training on anti-displacement and some conversations at a smaller level, sub-regional level, to get some more focused input about anti-displacement. And then I think before Labor Day, we're planning a conversation about objective design standards and talking more about those. So that's what we have on our calendars for upcoming TA. If you have any other ideas or needs, we would love to hear that. So that's what's coming up through the summertime. You can see the website for the HAP TA program, the local staffing assistance request, and contact for Carrie if you have any questions or comments. That does conclude our program for today, but if you have additional questions or comments about AB 2011, we'll stick around for a little bit, but we appreciate your attendance and participation and hope that this was informative for you as you prepare for these laws to become effective on July 1st. So thanks again, everyone, for your participation, and for Naz for leading us through this conversation and all the nuances of AB 2011. Thank you, Naz.
Hey guys, this is Scott Nightingale over at City of San Marcos. You may have already mentioned this, but is the PowerPoint presentation that was just provided, is that going to be on that project website?
Eventually, we do want to have all of this information posted publicly to go back and access, but I'll say in a follow-up email, I'm going to include a PowerPoint, all of these materials we've been talking about, the recording. We're talking about putting together an FAQ list of everything that was mentioned here, along with some other FAQs on these two bills. So I'll be sending that out in a follow-up email to all the attendees and everybody on my TA email list.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. And great job on the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions from the Zoom folks? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think we can conclude the meeting on Zoom and
yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks.